समझ नहीं आ रहा अपने सैलरी इंक्रीमेंट का क्या करूं।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स के एसआईपी का टॉप अप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
क्या समझ में नहीं आया?
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स का एसआईपी टॉप अप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
आप समझा?
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
The big Alaska summit between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin ended inconclusively, without, to quote Trump, an actual deal. India has welcomed the dialogue and the negotiations, but the nature of the inconclusiveness has also left the tariffs question with India in a limbo. In fact, till this very moment, confusion persists over whether the secondary tariffs to India apply or don't apply. The larger question of the strained relationships between India and America continue. I'm Barkha Dutt, you're with the Mojo Story. On the program today, we'll be decoding the big Alaska summit between Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump, but looking more closely at what this means for relations with India. Donald Trump has described in one of his interviews ahead of this Alaska summit, India to be, quote unquote, a client state, an oil client of Russia. India would, of course, not agree with that characterization. India has always argued that the purchase of Russian oil is in keeping with India's own economic and national interests, and has pointed out repeatedly that China, which buys more oil from Russia than India, has not been slapped with the same tariffs by Trump. Trump could not walk away from a deal in his meeting with Putin, but he will be meeting with Zelensky on Monday. Is India's betterment of relations with the United States now dependent on external factors? What has quite gone wrong between Trump, his administration, and the Modi government? And can it be fixed, or is it beyond repair? Let me introduce our very distinguished panel of experts on the program today. We're joined by General Rakesh Sharma, military veteran. Good to see you always on the program, sir. Veteran diplomat Ambassador Yash Sinha is with us. Always a pleasure to have you. And welcoming back to the program is Seema Sirohi, veteran journalist and a columnist based out of Washington, who just a few days ago had a very important column in the Economic Times pointing out that India's message wasn't reaching Donald Trump. And on this program, we'll try and understand why. Let me start by playing out a clip from Trump's interaction with the American media. This was before he met Putin, in which he described India to be an oil client of Russia. Take a look.
Don't you sense that Putin comes to this table maybe in an economic pinch, and that maybe the things you've already done have put him in an economic pitch? Is there an economic side to this, as Russia hoping to open up to the world?
Well, he lost an oil client, so to speak, which is India, which was doing about 40% of the oil. China, as you know, is doing a lot, and others have another few countries. And if I did what's called a secondary sanction or a secondary tariff, it would be, very devastating from their standpoint. If I have to do it, I'll do it. Maybe I won't have to do it.
Well, confusion has persisted till this very moment on the secondary tariffs in relation to India. Does it mean the extra 25%? Does he mean something above the 50%? We actually do not know the answer to that. I'll start with Seema. Seema, what for you are the big takeaways? Trump has come away without a deal, but he still has to meet Zelensky. And of course, the big question on what it all might mean or not mean for India.
Hello, and thank you for having me on your show. I think the summit, as you said, is inconclusive, but the meetings seem to have gone off rather well. They were very warm to each other. President Trump was calling President Putin by his first name. He applauded as Putin was walking towards the red carpet, etc., etc. So things have gone rather well, but there is no ceasefire deal, which was Trump's first sort of ask as he went into the meeting. So now it's up to the Europeans and President Zelensky whether they buy whatever understanding has been reached. They've used the word understanding, especially the Russians. It's all up in the air. As for what happens to India, we have a few days left. I hope some clarity will come. Otherwise, this could go down further, spiral down further, which we all hope won't happen. President Trump thinks that one of the big reasons for Putin to sort of seek this meeting or to come to a point where there could be a meeting was the threat of oil sanctions on India. I don't know if that's true or not, because my sense is that President Putin has gone into the meeting for his own, sake. He's not going to argue India's case in front of Trump. That's asking for too much. He has a lot on his plate that he has to sort out. He wants to be back in the game as a superpower. And he got an opportunity yesterday, and we shall see what happens next.
Ambassador Yash, for India to be called a oil client of Russia is hardly a characterization that India would agree with, but it's in keeping with Trump's sort of casting of this whole sort of tariffs issue. And he's still this date not been able to explain why China has not been slapped with the same tariffs. Given that the Alaska summit is inconclusive, the MEA has, of course, given a statement welcoming the process. How concerned should India be? Isn't it concerning in of itself that we are now looking at external factors to mend this broken relationship a bit?
Well, I'm sure we are concerned, and thank you, Barkha, for having me. But I think we're certainly concerned, but not overly concerned, because India is not an oil client of Russia. We are buying from 40 odd countries last I read. And Russia is the major supplier at present. Tomorrow, depending on market forces, it may not be. So I think, but that's a decision that will be taken in Delhi, not in Washington. So I think we need to be very clear about that. And I think our spokesperson has already clarified that. As far as the secondary sanctions kicking in, your guess is as good as mine. Since the meeting has been inconclusive, and of course the sanctions on China, which is a much bigger buyer of Russian oil, has been sanctions, if at all imposed, has been postponed, that decision, because there's a 90-day truce that China has got to conclude a trade deal. So there are many imponderables. As far as the India-US relationship is concerned, I think a wrecking ball has sort of hit that relationship at present, but I would not say it is irretrievable, simply because it's far too important to both our countries. And if the Prime Minister does go to New York for the UNGA next month, there will be an opportunity for a direct meeting with President Trump.
I'll come to the question of the Trump-Modi relationship in a moment, but on the China question, before I come to General Sharma, after the summit, Trump is asked about China and whether China will be penalized or whether that decision continues to be held in abeyance. And this is what he says.
To watch and see.
When you talked before coming here about the consequences for Vladimir Putin being severe, I found that interesting. Severe would be defined by me. India doesn't buy your oil. The European Union won't buy it. And why in the back of my head was I thinking, wait a minute, Donald Trump just delayed a possible increase in tariffs on China. Why do I think that probably President Trump was thinking ahead that maybe if you had to, that would have been part of the consequences?
Well, because of what happened today, I think I don't have to think about that. Now, I may have to think about it in 2 weeks or 3 weeks or something, but we don't have to think about that right now. I think the meeting went very well.
All right. Do you ever think Hillary Clinton?
So, General Sharma, the confusion over secondary tariffs persists. but no clear answer as to why China has been treated differently from India. How and in terms of security challenges, the cozying up of Pakistan with Washington, China possibly looking to be cutting a deal. Through the security lens, how concerned are you at all of these different strains?
Thank you, Barkha, for inviting me, and hello to the fellow panelists. Now, see, United States is so dependent on the rare earths and the magnets from China that it is virtually impossible for them to come across strongly on sanctions. Oil or no oil, it's your personal needs, American personal needs on the rare earth. And Chinese are now 90 or 94%. If you total between the extraction, between refinement and processing, they control their everything. So if it's about 35 kgs of rare earth per F-16 aircraft, the aircrafts can't be made till the time they buy the rare earths from them. So it's very easy to say that they could. Chinese have a strong leverage against United States on this. India doesn't have that kind of leverage in transactional terms with the United States. So the sanctions that come to us are so motor. It's isolated with us, and you cannot compare with what's happening with China. But then a step away from all this, is it that the sanctions against India on oil tariffs are related on oil, or is that there is anxiety and there is a more kind of annoyance on larger fronts, and oil is just an excuse? Because now President Trump has spoken to President Putin. No, they have talked to each other, and these talks were on the anvil for quite some time. And despite all this, then there was the tariffs laid against India. When the principals have spoken to each other, why India material at all? So what I'd like to say is that I don't think there is a great relevance of oil. There are other issues that need to be resolved at various levels, and oil will fall in, get clarified in times to come as it is. It is not a surprise that we are buying so large quantum of oil. We are buying for so many years altogether. So I don't think oil is an issue. It's an issue of India's rise, India's being part of BRICS. India now opening up to China. India is Make in India, and many other issues which must be riling the United States. And all these issues put together have been brought as oil as a front item to say, you are importing oil from Russians, while we will talk to Russians, but you can't buy oil. It's a very convoluted argument. So I would say that. And the second part of the question is about security. Now the point is that land for peace a deal? Till there is no deal, there is no deal, or something like that, President Trump said. So is there an acceptance? Because the Russians won't allow the land to go away. The ones that they are occupied 1,000-odd kilometers along the front of Donbass down to Crimea, that land they're not going to hand over. So is the forcing down President Zelensky to say, no, okay, bad luck, you have to accept this loss of land, but no further, not the entire Donbass, and not the entire Zaporozhye, not the entire Kherson, but whatever is being occupied as a front line becomes a front line. Very difficult issue. Now we are told there's a ticker on in BBC saying President Zelensky was spoken at length while President Trump was flying across to back to Washington. He spoke to NATO leaders. He also had a long conversation with President Zelensky, and President Zelensky is now flying day after tomorrow on Monday to Washington to have a chat. Now, you see, things are moving. There is no deal, but there is something happened in some kind of level, and that may be a next step forward.
I think the really important point, Seema, the General Sharma makes is that oil was never really the only issue, but now it can't be the issue at all, given that the principles have met. While Trump is negotiating with Russia, he can hardly make a song and dance out of the purchase of Russian oil. This takes me to your column, which I want to bring up on our screen, where you spoke. You said, "Hello, Mr. Trump, hello. Why New Delhi's outreach isn't reaching the only man who matters." And I think somewhere you're making the point that India's message hasn't been getting through. It's not getting through. And I want you to talk a little bit about this piece and the central argument in it.
See, this is a point I've been making for some time, that the only person who matters in this administration is President Trump. Policy is made top down, and everybody adjusts to whatever he says and does. So, India had hopes that outreach to various cabinet officials would be helpful, but turns out all those cabinet officials are basically watching their own backs, and nobody's championing the India relationship. And there are many factors why the relationship is where it is. I mean, I don't know how much time we have, but we can go back to the campaign. When President Trump, then candidate Trump, announced that I'm meeting Prime Minister Modi, because outreach had been made to him. He announced it at a rally. Then it was decided that no, unless he met Kamala Harris as well, it wasn't a good idea. Things like that, Trump does not forget. And then after that, it's one thing or the other. The whole India-Pakistan thing has really bothered him. And he has taken it personally. That's why he mentions it almost every day. Even yesterday in the interview with Fox News, he mentioned it. Now he's up to six wars that he has stopped, according to his count. And President Putin, if you notice how well he played into that ego thing, right? He praised him. He said, if you were president, the Ukraine war wouldn't have happened. Now, what more can Trump want? A validation from Putin about this. So we have gotten to a fix on this issue, the ego issue. India's backed into a corner and we don't know how to get out. I think the only way out is to offer some sort of a trade deal that works as a win for both sides. And that would require a lot of imaginative thinking, a lot of offers from Indian industrialists, Indian conglomerates, who, by the way, I've been told by somebody that the oil thing came into his head because he was told that not only is India buying at a discount, they are turning around and then making profit off of it. And there is one conglomerate, we know who it is. It really stayed in his head that, how come you're making profit off the cheap oil? India was buying under the price cap that was set by the Americans and the Europeans. So all these things have got into this very volatile mix. And we have to be very sort of careful and imaginative in how we bring it all back to
and in a way you are arguing that to do the outreach with those around Trump isn't the point. You've got to find a way of directly getting into Trump's head. And if Putin is flattering him and India is seen to not have even given him the praise he thinks he deserves, then he's all het up over that.
Right. But first reach the inner circle, which is, his sons and people like that. I mean, India has tried. A couple of MPs have gone and met Don Jr., but hasn't got us anywhere.
Yeah. So, Ambassador Yashtina, what do you think do you first agree with Seema's argument that the outreach with Trump hasn't worked? That a man who's getting praise even from Putin is going to look at India and say, look at how miserly they are from Trump's point of view, not ours. How do you see Seema's argument that it's Trump or Trump's inner circle you need to get through to? So normal sort of, diplomatic protocols don't apply?
I agree with Seema that the person who really matters, the only person that matters in this administration is the president himself. And perhaps she's right that our outreach directly to the president hasn't been enough. But, having said that, I recall when the campaign was on, and I remember candidate Trump announcing that he's going to meet Prime Minister Modi, and that didn't happen. But there's a background to that. You recall the campaign before that, with the Howdy Modi event at Houston, I think, where he said, "Ab ki baar Trump Sarkar," and the flack he got, our Prime Minister, for saying that. So he was trying to be even-handed. Perhaps that didn't really work out. I don't even know whether a meeting with Kamala Harris was sought or not sought. But anyway, be that as it may, I thought that would be water under the bridge when the Prime Minister met President Trump in Washington in February. From the body language, it appeared that the meetings went off well. But later on, obviously, the meeting in, I think it was Abu Dhabi, between I think it was Eric or Don, I forget, one of the sons of President Trump, Zach Witkoff, the son of Steve Witkoff, and the gentleman from the Pakistan Crypto Council, and the deals that were struck, that obviously influenced the reaction. Because if you recall, when Operation Sindoor began, the reaction from the US, from President Trump in particular, was less than lukewarm. And I think that was very disappointing. And I think since then, it was again, then he announced a ceasefire even before we had completed our action. I mean, so obviously all that played in. And then, of course, you know what happened. I think the best way to try and retrieve the situation is a meeting or a conversation between the two principals. I do hope that happens soon. And I reiterate that it is such an important relationship that both sides need to ensure that, it doesn't go further down the drain.
General Sharma, is that how you see the process ahead? I mean, before that, the Prime Minister is going to be in China for the SCO summit. Putin is expected to come to India. A lot more is going to happen before Trump and Modi possibly meet, if they do meet.
So actually, Barkha, the point is that Ambassador Sinha is right, and so is Seema, that actually the true facts of the entire conversation over last 6 months is not on the fore. It's not on the open knowledge. So while we were analyzing, we are conjecturing larger than knowing exactly what has happened. Because till not too long ago, we said there was an early harvest deal or a mini deal in the offing, and mini deal has been arrived at, and it will be announced in short while, and the larger deal will come up later. But then the early harvest also didn't come through. And any pragmatic nation, which the United States is, would know that we have severe political considerations and socio-economic considerations for dealing on agriculture and dairy products. The whole nation rests on that one. To accept it is actually harakiri, and it won't be accepted. So when they know all this, then they say the deal has not taken place on trade. Trade is also important, but I think there is more to it that one is not able to point finger at as to why that annoyance and so large an annoyance comes up, because our relationship is with China is also an attempt being made even before the elections took place. It was in October that we started talking, and some kind of rapprochement was brought about with the Chinese. So all these things are on the anvil even before it. So these are reasons for it, or all these amalgamated together, especially of Sindoor, and it put him off so much that he decided to do what President Trump has done. And I agree that there is it's one man in the United States which matters now is President Trump, and he decides. So everything is follows through according to that. My good take is that a turnaround to happen, we'll have to start talking at that level to approach the president and say, okay, how things need to be sorted out. And I'm sure we can find some via media to do so. There is so much convergence between United States and India that to find ways and means to move together are tremendous. Even if President Trump announced at 5:30 in the evening before we announced half an hour, it was a well-planned move. The Pakistanis undercut us. They rang up President Trump and told them, okay, the deal is ongoing. So he announced at 5:30 in the evening, which is early morning in the United States. All was well rigged up. It was planned in that manner. I think we need to open up the channels of communication in any which way. Steve Witkoff if he's a gentleman who's the forefront or whoever is, to say as to what is it, where are the things being stuck up.
Yeah. Let me give Seema the last word. Both Ambassador Sinha and General Sharma talking about a possible Modi-Trump meeting. But one of the people in our audience Prasad says, Barkha, Modi has to announce opening up of India-China trade before meeting Trump. Only then can Modi talk to Trump from a position of strength. Right now, India seems to have been put down by Trump. I mean, how important? Obviously, this self-respect as a nation is important to India. Modi has made a very strong public statement earlier against mediation, now about the red lines in the trade sector when it comes to farmers, fisher folk, and dairy. Do you believe that this is important, that India meets, or Prime Minister Modi meets Donald Trump from a position of strength? Or do you believe Trump doesn't think like that? Trump doesn't think, he's just a bully. He needs something else. And what is that something else? What is that metaphorical lollipop that you offer someone like Donald Trump?
See, I don't understand this argument that open up to China. You already have $100 billion deficit with China. How much more opening do you want to do? And, I don't think that's a position of strength. That will hurt Indian industries, small businesses even more. Besides, remember that Trump is trying to cut a deal with Xi Jinping.
Yeah.
And I don't know how that thing will work out, that somehow if you open up to China, that Trump will take you more seriously. I don't think so. I think the thing to do is, if there is any talk or serious talk of Trump and Modi meeting in New York, a lot of groundwork will have to be done for the meeting to be successful, which means some big announcements, mobilizing American CEOs, Indian CEOs, etc., etc. Lot of groundwork, so a trade deal can be announced. Now, here's what I think. Lots of other countries managed to announce something, right? We started like way back and turned out to be the laggard. Okay, so a lot of countries have made these gigantic announcements of $550 billion investment in the US, etc. Maybe much of it won't come true. The thing is, headlines and ego boosting. What stopped Indian businessmen, those who are billionaires, who strut on the world stage, to think of something and help out and help the country meet this very critical need? So I don't know. I hope the meeting takes place, but I'm sure the MEA is thinking and working, and so is the Commerce Ministry. But a lot needs to happen, fall into place before that meeting. Because I'm sure the MEA wouldn't want to expose the Prime Minister to something, like
Absolutely.
unpredictable.
Absolutely. Well, we leave it there. I think that's a really important point. I mean, the Prime Minister, there's already strain, and you cannot possibly have more strain. So the homework on any possible meeting would have to be done down to the last detail. An interesting thought there. Why doesn't private business just talk about, bringing a project to America, something that Trump can take to his people as a win? Trump wants that, and India, of course, has many reasons to be upset also with Trump. But, in what form does the thaw come? The answer is not clear yet. We leave it there. The Alaska winter didn't quite bring the thaw between Putin and Trump. The process has started. Will it yield to a kind of de-escalation between Washington and Delhi? We'll just have to see. Ambassador Yash Sinha, General Rakesh Sharma, Seema Sirohi, always a pleasure. Thank you to all of you, and have a great weekend.
It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.